Amazing. We are in the introduction to the Zohar by the Baal HaSulam. We are in section 10, if you are reading with me within the book of the Magid publication, the Introduction to the Zohar, the Wisdom of Truth, page 19. We left off talking about similarity and difference of form. As a quick review, you can be sitting next to someone on the plane, shoulder to shoulder, and be thousands of spiritual worlds apart. You can be 6,000 miles away from someone and be intimately unified with them. Everything depends on the similarity of form you have with the individual. All the more so, the similarity of form that we can have with the Creator, who is said to be all giving, because how can the perfection of all perfection receive anything truly? And so we want to be giving as well. That helps us align and connect with our Maker. So now we are entering into the section Ta'am hitavut ma'arechet hatuma v'klipot. The reason the system of impurity and the husks come into being. The whole system of impurity, of evil, of chaos, all negativity. Why does it exist? What is the reason for it coming into being? Why is this part of the structure? The Baal HaSulam begins. We are now in a position to answer query 4. How can the system, literally, the Hebrew is chariot, how can the system of impurity and the husks emerge from the sanctity of the Creator, since they are so radically distant from the Creator's sanctity? How can the Creator maintain and nourish them? I remind us that the notion of sanctity, kedusha, kadosh, holiness, is defined by being separate, unique, and distinct. Because that which is unique and distinct from all of creation is giving, because creation is defined by its receiving characteristics at all levels and modalities, from the inanimate to the plant to the animal and the speaking. So, how can this holiness of the Creator, being this absolute aspect of giving, how can it maintain and nourish these aspects of pure receiving, of pure egoism, of pure chaos? How could it be? Now, the language that Kabbalah uses is husks. Sometimes it can be translated quite literally as shells. The shell of a fruit has the same word in modern Hebrew, klipa. Now, I remind us that the shell of a fruit helps protect the fruit, keeps it from rotting. And so too, that's a mindset for us, the same way that we say chaos is really just unstructured potential. So too, the blockages, the husks in our life are really coming from a place of safety mechanisms and protecting us. It's often the case that we don't need that protection. It's actually not serving us fully. But if we didn't have the husks, if we didn't have the klipot, we would become subsumed and melt into the infinite light that's literally right here, right now. So it's actually a good thing. It's protecting us. It's keeping the light out, because if there was none of it, we would rot in a moment. Imagine throwing an apple into the sun. And so, by definition, these husks have a structure to them because of their protecting force. But indeed, because they are rooted in this impurity and the evil and so forth, they are something that is to be slowly but surely peeled away. We want to peel the husks. We want to reveal the light, but we want to do it in measured form. If you peel away everything, you will melt and crash. If you do it in subsequent steps in a healthy way, as the ladder has many steps, you don't need the rocket ship and boots and jetpack to go from rung to rung. It's for good reason. So too, we peel the layers off layer by layer, and it's done so for our benefit. Okay, so this is the question. How can it be that the all-giver is creating and nourishing this system of evil? He continues. We must first understand the true essence of impurity and husks. Know that the desire to receive, which, as we said, is the essence of the souls as they were created, since that enables them to receive all of the fullness planned for creation, does not remain as it was originally in the souls. Had it, being the desire to receive, remained the same, they, being the souls, would always remain separate from the Creator, since their change in form separates them from the Creator. So we are defining the creation as being receiving. In fact, the essence of the souls, the reason we were created was to receive the infinite light of the Creator. The purpose of creation is to give goodness to creation. So we were given this desire to receive because without the ego, we would actually be unable to fulfill the purpose of creation. But we are here to transmute and to transform the ego because at the final level, we are able to receive in order to give, as mentioned. So had this desire to receive stayed the same, meaning if it just stays receiving in of itself, it's not enough because it's a dissimilarity of form. So we are here to transmute, transform this desire to receive into its perfected form, which is receiving in order to give, and therefore will then be in similarity of form, because a matter is judged by its end, as we spoke about. So if you're receiving in order to give the joy and the pleasure to the Creator, then all is well. So ego is the human form of the husk, Sandy asks. Ego at large, which is even Bal Hasulam's choice of language. He uses the language of egoism as well, which is probably the first time such modern language was used by any Kabbalist or, Jewish rabbi for that matter. And we're talking 100 years ago. He had articles even called literally egoism versus altruism. And so, yes, the husk in general is described as our ego. Should we transform our husk, asks Canis, similar to shadow work? You can say that poetically, but rather than transform it, really we are peeling it away slowly but surely. We are going into it to extract and free the spark of light that is maintaining it. Here we are speaking about how the Creator maintains and nourishes the husks, meaning to say it has a spark of the Creator within it, otherwise it wouldn't exist. And so, in order to extract the spark, there are a plethora of methods. If you want to talk ritually, indeed, the involvement in the Torah and its mitzvot in of themselves can free sparks. If you want to talk psycho-spiritually, doing inner alignment and trauma work and making those shifts and seeing the purpose and the reason behind the pain that we've experienced and how it was in order for us to build and to grow and how it's for us and it didn't happen to us. That's also a form of extracting the spark. It depends what parameter we're speaking from. Good questions. Marlene asks, is there any classification, types of husks we should remove? Is there an order for it? I believe we'll get a little bit more clarification as we continue in the text. There are different differentiations. Yes, there are different levels of klipot. We're about to actually clarify that the same way that there are the four spiritual worlds of Asiya, Yitzira, Bria, and Atzilut, so too there is an equivalence in the impure spiritual worlds. Now, to clarify, it's an important clarification. When I say spiritual world, I don't mean like a Jupiter or a Pluto. It's not something out there. We're talking about abstract spirituality. There's no form or physicality to anything that we're speaking about here whatsoever. World in Hebrew, olam, is from the language of Ne'elem, and Ne'elem means hidden, because all the world is a hidden state of spiritual consciousness that's already within us. So when we take off the husks, when we peel off the layers, we reveal what's hidden, being the higher spiritual consciousness of a greater altruism and a greater capacity to give and to be self-sacrificial with a joy and a pleasure and a calm than before. And the spiritual worlds, meaning the spiritual levels of consciousness of impurity, are related indeed to ego and receiving for oneself alone. And there's levels to that too. There are hierarchies for that too. Some actions are more egoistic than others. But let's continue in the text. I think we'll get further clarity as we go on. I do see questions in the corner of my eye on Instagram. If you'd like to ask your questions, feel free to join us on the Zoom and join our Lion Tree coaching community for free. In order to repair the separation from God that is present in the vessel of the souls, God created all of the worlds and divided them into two systems. As the verse states, God made both one opposite the other. From Kohelet, Ecclesiastes, Ze luma ze ose Elokim. And this is a principle, and that for every force in the world, there's an opposing force. It's not just that there's an above and a below, as within, so without. So too, there is, as something is good and holy, so too there is something negative and misaligned. This is also true within oneself. When we elevate up the spiritual ladder, when we gain greater aspects of belief consciousness, right, of faith, emuna, of certainty in the Creator, when we are able to give of ourselves more and be in a greater altruism, truth is that our egoism grows in tandem. The greater you are spiritually, the greater ego you have. Often we think the opposite. I'm greater spiritually because I have a less of an ego. I think that is a very sophisticated egoism that is convincing an individual that they have arisen. But based on this principle, when the goodness grows, so too does the challenger within our consciousness. The ego is our fuel. If it wasn't for the desire to receive, we wouldn't move a finger, we wouldn't make families, we wouldn't create and innovate. There wouldn't be any movement. It is the raw material of creation itself, arguably. So, the Creator made both one opposite the other. There are four holy worlds of Abiyah. The acronym is ABYA, or Aleph Bet Yud Ayin, standing for Atzilut, the world of emanation, Bria, the world of creation, Yetzira, the world of formation, and Asiya, the world of action, as well as their counterparts, the four impure worlds of Atzilut, Bria, Yetzira, and Asiya. The Creator established a desire to give in the holy systems of Abiyah, and He removed from them a selfish desire to receive, as He will explain in chapters 14 through 19 further. We're currently in section 10. He placed that desire to receive, right, the egoism, and just for clarity, receiving for oneself alone. The desire to receive in of itself is a pure thing. It's just the raw material of reality. But receiving for yourself alone and just for receiving's sake, that's what we mean by ego. He placed that desire to receive in the impure worlds of Abiyah, which separated them from the Creator and from the worlds of sanctity, of holiness. This is why the husks are referred to as dead. As the verse describes in Tehillim, Psalms 106:28, sacrifices of the dead. Zivchei metim in Hebrew. Similarly, evildoers are attracted to them, being the husks. As the sages state, quote, Harashayim b'chayihem nikrayim metim. The wicked, even during their lives, are called dead, as brought in Tractate Brachot 18b of the Talmud. This is because their inherent desire to receive, which is the opposite of the form that stems from God's sanctity, being pure giving, separates them from the life force of the living, the Chayei Chaim, the life of all lives. They exist at opposite poles from the Creator. For God has no desire to receive, but only to give to others. And the husks contain no element of giving, but only receiving for their own pleasure. These are extreme opposites. It is known that spiritual distance starts with a small difference in form and ends with a form that is radically opposite, at an extreme distance on another level entirely. So, too, in a different essay, the Baal HaSulam says that a 1 degree shift will eventually be 180 as it continues. All it takes is a small misalignment and a continuation in that direction that can indeed veer us completely off any path of authentic self-development. So husks are called dead because it removes us from the life of all lives. To be connected to the Creator is called life. So to be disconnected from the Creator is called death. Speaking for myself, I die many times a day, many times an hour, many times a minute, maybe. It's a back and forth. You're thinking about the Creator, you're not thinking about the Creator. Even just the thought of the Creator, Baal HaSulam says, is already a dveikut. It's already an adhesion. It's already a connection with him, at the basic definition of the term. And so when we receive for ourselves, indeed, we are disconnected. Now, a really interesting nuance that we don't hear so often, at least in religious circles, we speak about the following of the Torah and the mitzvot as being a holy endeavor. But even the sages said explicitly in the Talmud that the Torah is either an elixir of death or an elixir of life. Meaning, according to my intention, it could be that it actually is separating me from the Creator. Doesn't mean I'm connected just because I'm learning. Oh, I'm so holy. Look at me getting my mitzvah points. Ah, I'm gonna have such a good report card when I get up to heaven. But really, the whole thing can be ego. Now, that doesn't mean we shouldn't do it and we shouldn't practice it, because it's still good to attempt and regulate and habituate ourselves in the way of giving. And if it wasn't for the action, we wouldn't be able to observe our actions and make an accounting of it after the fact and see where our ego is at versus where we would like to be in our altruism. So there is a value in the action nonetheless, but we are not to kid ourselves and to think just because we are involved in it that we are already giving and holy and sacred and so forth. We are in our essence. Can't take away from the essence being unconditionally valuable, perfectly good, eternal, and the purpose being in every moment. But practically, question is, are we expressed yet in our essence? And so we die and become revived many times a day, one thought, one degree, and may we have many thoughts towards the degree of alignment with the Creator. Section 11. The world developed. Now, the Hebrew here is nishtalshelu. The language is hishtalshelut. And hishtalshelut is a cascading, it's a chain sequencing of events. So the practical translation here is developed, but it is interesting to meditate on the actual Hebrew root that is a chain event, a sequencing, because indeed each and every one of us are a chain in the sequence of humanity's development towards the final correction and ascension of our collective consciousness, which we are all a part of. And so when we meditate on, wow, I am a piece in the chain, and the chain is literally incomplete without me. And what implications does that provide? Some wonderful ones, if you ask me. The world's developed, Nishtal Shalu, until this material world came into being. A place that contains both body and soul. And a time wherein both corruption and repair are possible. Now, the word for corruption is kilkul. In modern Hebrew, that word also means spoil. Where you can spoil a child in the same way that a fruit can get spoiled. Use the same word. The body, goof in Hebrew, I find that transliteration hilarious and quite fitting. Goof, right? Goofy. The ego is quite goofy because that's what the body refers to. The body, which is the desire to receive, desired from its roots in God's plan for creation, as discussed earlier. So when the Baal HaSulam says the word body, he often isn't referring to the literal physical body. He's referring to the spiritual body. There is the soul of the soul and the body of the soul. The soul of the soul is the aspect of giving. The body of the soul is the aspect of receiving. But it, the body, passed through the worlds of impurity, as Job states, quote, a wild ass gives birth to a human. Job 11:12. The world's wild ass. Perhaps you guys prefer I say donkey. Who is this Hasidic guy saying the word ass? So strange. The wild donkey refers to the worlds of impurity. It, the body, remains enslaved under that system until the age of 13, bar mitzvah, or 12, bat mitzvah. That is the period of corruption, quote unquote, the spoiling. The time of spoiling, the time to actually expand a person's desire, to give them a big vessel so that they're prepared to do deeper work once they step into quote unquote adulthood, is actually considered a type of spoiling. There is an idea that Kabbalists actually like to spoil a child. Doesn't necessarily mean give them the entire box of Oreos, but one must know the child and develop them according to their way, as King Solomon says, Alpi Darko. But there is an idea that it is not yet the fullest point of opportunity to start really developing the desire to give. You can certainly practice an attempt to habituate a child to, you do the chore, you get the prize. Obviously, that's giving in order to receive. And so too, most of our efforts, if we really checked out our intentions, is also some type of giving for self-interest. I digress in regards to children. I mean, he'll clarify a little bit more here. I would like to speak a little bit before we continue on the notion of the donkey, that a wild ass gives birth to a human. Clarifies here that the words wild donkey refer to the worlds of impurity. Now, it's true that a donkey, even though here the language is A'ir pera Adam yivaled. In any case, there are other contexts where this idea of donkey is mentioned, and it is one of chamor. Chamor is another word for donkey in Hebrew, and it has the same exact letters as Homer. Homer is raw material. So what this means to teach us is that indeed, the raw material of our humanity, of our essence of creation itself, is that of receiving. So much so that there's even an aspect of impurity, this receiving for receiving's sake, this ego of how we are born. Thus, while donkey gives birth to a human, it means the human is born into this raw material of receiving. I say it many times, I'll say it again. Babies, and I have one, deliciously cute. They give so much to me indirectly by their cuteness. Apparently, babies give by doing this cute little slap on your face. That's their way of saying I love you, says my wife. I mean, she read the article somewhere. I don't know who's talking about. I don't mind. But it's not with the real intention. We can't say the baby is like really giving the way that someone can give of their time, energy, or resource and money to someone. Because in truth, as cute as babies are, and as pure as babies and small children are, and I don't mean this in a negative sense, I mean this in the purely technical sense, children are pure egoists. We all know what it's like to ask for the cookie and no give me the cookie, no give me the... Kids are the best salesmen. They'll won't stop, they won't take no for an answer. They'll keep going at it because they are a ball of receiving for good reason. That's why we develop the child in a way to not only regulate the potential of giving, but we also respect and indeed feed their desire to receive accordingly as well, because it is a time of spoiling, it is a time of expanding the vessel so that it'll be ripe when it comes to the bar or bat mitzvah. He continues. After age 13, a person's performance of mitzvot, performed with the intention to give satisfaction to his maker, begins purifying the selfish desire to receive that had been imprinted in him, seeming to imply, I can do mitzvot with intention to receive for myself. I can do mitzvot to get my mitzvah points and get the good report card in the heavens when I'm done with the world. That's a start. That's something. At least there's the behavior and the action and the regulation of stepping outside of oneself. But we shouldn't have a limiting mindset and think that even children, even though it says 13 here, in our community, those who learn Kabbalah at 4 o'clock in the morning with the master Kabbalist of the generation, our kids already at 6, 7, 8 years old are learning literally this. I mean, they're learning the same things. They're learning the introductions. They understand it perfectly. You ask them, what is the aspect of, giving and receiving in this week's parsha? They'll say, the Pharaoh is the receiving and the Israel is the giving. What's an example for you practically? Giving a piece of my chocolate or keeping it for myself. It's not rocket science, right? These are pretty straightforward concepts. In any case, even such a child is able to understand the notion of doing an action with the intention to give satisfaction to their maker. If we command, let's say, our children, we hope that they follow in our path. Not to say that the kid doesn't have their own path. Every person is absolutely unique. But as far as ethics and good behavior, obviously we want to raise good standing supporters and contributors to society in a healthy way. And so if that is the case, there is a nachas, there is a joy in the parent to experience that in their children. The same is true for us in the Torah and the mitzvah. The Creator has a nachas when we involve ourselves in the path and the blueprint that He has provided. Now, in this context, okay, I can do the thing to earn the chocolate, fair. I can also do the thing to give joy to He who wants to help me and develop me so that I can experience the greatest joy in life. A bit more aligned, if you ask me. So, once a person is of this age, then assuming they have that intention, there was a greater light in a channel that is actually drawn upon their soul that refines their system. And quite literally, the word is refined because if the soul is this pure and absolute golden essence, then removing the husks, removing the klipot is akin to cleaning the slag off of the gold. So indeed, it is a refinement process. It is also a type of remembering and a coming to our essence because the gold is already there. We're just taking off the dirt of ego. I'm just going to read the comment here. An essential teachings of Kabbalah, you've said attaching the thought to God is key, remembrance. What does it mean to attach the thoughts to God? Rabbis, popes, imams would think about God all the time. No spiritual quality in most of them. Why? I don't exactly understand your question. I'm sorry. Just, it's the way that it's phrased. Even the thinking about God, if I'm understanding your question correctly, indeed connects us to what does it mean to attach the thoughts to God? To literally think about God. Now, if you want to get a little bit more specific, like what does it mean to think about God? Well, amazingly, the very first halacha, the very first law in the legal codes of Judaism, in the commentary of the Mishnah Brura, which is today's widely accepted, most modern understanding of the original Shulchan Aruch, as brought down by the great Kabbalist and master Yosef Karo in the times of the Ari in the 16th century. In the very first halacha, the Mishnah Brura says that when you wake up in the morning and you wake up like a lion to serve your creator, to serve your creator and wake up in the morning lion with this alacrity, with this strength, with this vigor. And the Mishnah Brura clarifies based on the principle of Lifnei Hashem lenegdi tamid, that before me, Hashem is always. Hashem is always before me. Now, there are different interpretations of being harmonious and being balanced because God is always here and God is always watching. So I'm before God and I am trying to be in alignment, which we would define in this Ashlagian context as giving. Otherwise, the notion of the Creator always being before us, as it pertains to the Mishnah Brura, is quite literally to have the four-letter name of the Creator, Yud and Hey and the Vav and the Hey, in our mind's eye. The very first halacha says that we should be meditating all day on the four-letter name. Amazing. That very first thing, how Eastern-like is Judaism, how meditative and deep is Judaism, that we are suggested to meditate all day. So that is an idea. Yes. Keep thinking on the four-letter name, because when I think of the four-letter name, more specifically, the Mishnah Berurah actually gives the vowel points of the word yir'ah, which translates to reverence, a holy awe, sometimes roughly translated as fear. I don't think fear is as fitting as an awe or reverence, because it's an awesomeness and greatness. To feel the light and the presence of the infinite is a bit cooler, a bit more uh, relatable than the fear. If you ask me, I don't think any of the fear-mongering, rah-rah fieriness and what we hear by some teachers are ultimately doing people the best justice. It might scare them and inspire them to do the inner work, but I don't think it's lasting and grounding. We have way more sources and support for going in the way of Hillel, going in the way of Chesed, going in the way of loving kindness first and foremost, because that's actually what Kabbalah teaches. Start with the right line, loving kindness. And then you go into the left, which is the Gevurah, the structure, the awe, and the reverence. But I digress. We're talking about purifying the desire to receive at the age of Bar Mitzvah. We're talking about the intention to give satisfaction to the Creator. And I was ultimately answering Kanis here in terms of keeping your mind on the Creator, indeed, the four-letter name. Perhaps there are other ways that you can visualize and appreciate, but the masters gave us the advice of the four-letter name, most specifically with indeed the vowel points of yir'ah. I want to say a quick side note as well for those who, and it doesn't take so much time to regulate and practice the different accents of the four-letter names. There are deep meditations of the Merkava, the chariot, and there's different levels of it, but one that is available for all of us, the Bein Ish Chai, who was a great master Kabbalist uh, in Baghdad in the past 150 years. So much so when someone asked the Bala Sulam, who should I learn from? He said, learn from the masters, like the Bein Ish Chai. So the Bein Ish Chai said that everyone, including the Ama Artsim, the regular folk, the potato farmers, so to speak, can and ideally should meditate on the Merkava daily. Some would even argue maybe hourly. And what the Merkava is going through every sphera, top to bottom, with the different accents, the different vowels for each Yud Ke Vav Ke. Keter is Kamat, Chochma is Patach, Bina is Tzere, and so forth all the way down. Think of it as a body scan moving through the energy. Rabbi Daniel Katz has some beautiful Merkava meditations available on YouTube. I have some somewhere that one can find, perhaps in the Lion Tree Coaching Library, something like that. In any case, that is another way to think of the creator and to keep him in mind. There are different sphirot, different energies that we can connect to. Perhaps one has a challenge in their gevura, and they can bring up the name of Yud Ke Vav Ke with the accent of gevura and see what that does for them. Can get creative, and it doesn't take too much time to learn the accents, learn the vowel points for the sphirot, and start practicing. The Bein Ish Chai said that the potato farmer can do it, so can I. So can we. This is similar to chakra meditation. Our chakras and sphirot are actually the same. They are not the same. They're similar in the sense that it could be, kind of in a similar area, but there's actually different chakra systems and different uh, camps. Normally, we talk about the seven in different Eastern traditions, but I believe there are other systems that have as high as 15. In fact, the Ari brought down a separate energy system and points of our own body that's actually separate from the sphere. That's actually a 15-point system that isn't so readily available for the average individual to access. I myself don't even know of it. I practice the Merkava and the Spherotes and so forth, but they are different. The Sefirot are the proper system of the Tselem Elokim, the image of God, the system of reality through and through. Perhaps the other camps can say the same of chakras, but the chakra is more so related to the body and its energy. The Sefirot are much more abstract and divine and expansive in their nature and their root. The Sefirot are drawn all the way from the Ein Sof, from the infinite itself at its deepest root. People think that if they work on their chakras, they're working on their spirituality. I challenge it has nothing to do with spirituality. What is spiritual is what is connecting one to the Creator. If someone is somehow aligning their chakras and it makes them be a better servant of God, maybe you have some type of conversation there. But generally speaking, the approach is a sophisticated egoism, if I dare. Sphirot are a different system. And for those who know, and for those who have experienced, and before I started meditating and working energetically with Sphirot, I was very familiar and very involved in all things chakra. So I'm speaking from personal experience because I've only been growing these bad boys for 5.5 years. And I can say it is a world of difference and it is incomparable because one can connect you directly to source itself, and the other is seemingly feels good and aligning, but still keeps you in the body and is a type of materiality and physicality, not beyond. Simone says, when you talk of God, you talk of creator. Are you always referring to the same one? Yes, I just try to use the word creator because it's much more modern and God is very triggering to people. The translation I'm reading from uses God, and I try my best to use creator because it's a bit more neutral. Uh, God is, an interesting uh, English term, and creator is a proper term that is often used in holy texts. Boré, literally creator, is a very accurate term because what else can we actually say of the all-giver other than the giving nature of creating itself, which is the ultimate form of giving? Yeah, I don't agree with chakras and sphirot being all the same. It's certainly not. It could be, people who draw commonality, but it's a different system. Simone, I don't know who's teaching about chakras. It's not me. Let's continue in the text. After age 13, a person's performance of mitzvot, performed with the intention to give satisfaction to his maker, begins purifying the selfish desire to receive that is imprinted in him. Performance of mitzvot gradually turns that selfish desire, that egoism, into a desire to give. This gradually draws, the Hebrew is mamshich, a holy soul from its roots in the plan of creation. It, being the holy soul, traverses the entire system of sanctified worlds and becomes enclosed in the body. That is the time of repair, or in Hebrew, the time of tikkun. So the soul, the essence, is something that we have, but this text seems to say that it's in potential. We have souls, but are we expressing the soul? Have we activated the soul? Are we expressing the soul? Here we are defining the holy soul, the nefesh kedusha in the Hebrew, as the aspect of giving. So if someone lives a life ensconced in their egoism, I don't know if they've lived a soulful life. I don't know if their soul's been activated whatsoever. So it seems to imply here that through the performance of the mitzvot with the intention to give, actually draws the light and activates the chip within our operating system that is the soul to become more and more alive and pronounced in contrast to the egoism that we are born with. Someone sent me a private message. I don't know if they know if that's different from the regular chat, but in the chance that they want to stay anonymous, I'll just say, someone messaged me, is the spirit related to Mashiach? I would say more so the Mashiach has relation to different sfirot. In the Mashiach expression, there's plenty of writings of Mashiach being connected to Keter, Tiferet, Malchut. Mashiach ben Yosef is Yesod. There are different parameters, but to speak a bit more generally and abstractly, every quantum string, every detail of reality, so to speak, has 10 sfirot. It is the fundamental structure and building blocks of reality. But Mashiach is actually, if you want to be very specific in Kabbalah, a code word for the light of Yechida, the light of Keter. It is the highest consciousness that we can reach. Every one of us has a spark of Mashiach within us. Kanis, I appreciate your question. I think it's a little off topic, so I'm going to continue the text. So, if the Holy Soul traverses the entire system of sanctified worlds, all the holy Atzilut, Bria, Yitzira, and Asiya, it goes through the whole system, all the way from the desire to give goodness to us, from the Ein Sof itself, from the thought of creation. And the soul is drawn down all the way and finally becomes enclosed in the body. Now, again, we are to interpret body as the desire to receive. I think in this context, he is actually referring to the literal body, since we're talking practically about, the bar bat mitzvah actualizing themselves. And that is the time of tikkun, meaning as a soul in a body, this is the time of our correction, of aligning our soul. Now, I nuance correction and tikkun doesn't mean that we're coming into the world necessarily blemished. Rather, we come into the world in our essence perfect, as we learned in paragraph 5 of our perfect essence. And the tikkunim, the repairs that we have, are in order to reveal more of that perfection. If the soul is already gold and the cleaning of it is taking off the slag, so that is the repair. It's a cleaning process, it's a refinement process. The tikkun is a refinement after all. But just because it's refining doesn't mean that it's intrinsically broken. That is, I would argue, a chaotic mindset and interpretation which doesn't serve our mental health. I've talked to plenty who have suffered from it, unfortunately, myself included. From then on, he continually acquires and reaches levels of sanctity that are part of the plan of creation and are present in the Ein Sof, in the infinite. These levels of sanctity assist the person in transforming the selfish desire to receive that is embedded in him into a desire to give, to the point that he becomes one who receives only in order to give satisfaction to his maker rather than to benefit himself. It's saying through this arduous, long climb up the spiritual ladder, we indeed can quantum leap past the threshold and become altruists. Even in the place of giving in order to give, the masters are still said to have ego, and they have plenty of it, more so than your average Yosef. No offense to Brother Yosef here. It's just, English is average Joe. I just like to say average Yosef because it's funny. Brother Yosef, you're great. Thank you for questions. The average Yosef, the average person, when we give, it's for the self-benefit, but ultimately, indeed, through the process and elevation, we can come to a pure intention to give satisfaction to the other. In this way, a person equates his form, an equivalence, an equality of form, a similarity of form to that of his maker. For receiving for the sake of giving to others is considered the purest form of giving. This is related to what is stated in Kedushin 7a of the Talmud. If a woman gives a gift to an important man, she receives benefit from the fact that he consents to accept a gift from her. That benefit is adequate to be considered the exchange that is legally required for them to be married. The fact that he accepts the gift in order for her to benefit from the fact that she gave it to him is considered a complete gift to her. So imagine you have an everyday Josefina and she's marrying a king, or she gives the gift to the king and the king accepts the gift. It's a great pleasure for her. Wow, such an honorable individual. So him receiving the gift is giving to her. And because she is actually benefiting, him receiving the gift from her is akin to him putting a ring on her finger and is capable of betrothing her according to this classic understanding of Jewish law. I see some questions there. Let me just finish the paragraph and I'll get to them shortly. The person then achieves a complete bond with God. For a spiritual bond is nothing other than an equating of form. To paraphrase a statement of the sages, quote, how can one cleave to the Creator? Rather, cleave to his attributes, based on Sota 14a of the Talmud. That is how a person can become worthy of receiving all of the good, pleasantness, and softness that was in the plane of creation. What an interesting word. I love that he chose the word softness. There's a softness, there's a calmness to life that we are to receive from above. So we cannot cleave to that which is abstract, undefinable, beyond all comprehension. Therefore, we cleave to the essence of all, the perfection of all perfections, through his attributes. His attributes are arguably the tree of life. We are made in that image, the Tselem Elokim, the Eitz Chaim. And so when we work on our character traits, we can cleave to him through all of our refinement. When I work on my love of the other, when I work on my healthy boundary, when I work on my compassion, when I work on my endurance and perseverance, when I work on my humility and subjugation, when I work on my connection and communication and inner peace and nobility and authenticity, all of these are ways to cleave to my Creator, assuming I'm doing so in a way of alignment that is in the mode of giving as opposed to receiving from myself. That is how we cleave or connect to the source. Checking out the comments here. Simone says these concepts are huge, also hard to be immediately all understood in English. Fair. It would be much good to be seen again to digest all fully, as it will be. It is recorded, and it is or will be in the Lion Tree Coaching classroom The first two classes are there. The third one will be there, as well as all the ones moving forward, God willing. Is receiving to give like ego disillusion? Interesting choice of language. I guess you could say that because at that point, the ego is fully transmuted, it's transformed because you're receiving to give. As the sages say, the Malach HaMavet will become a Malach Kadosh, the angel of death will become a holy angel. And so rather than disillusion, I would call it ego transmutation because you are transforming the ego into its purified form. The ego is actually connected to the purpose of creation, just that we need to refine it and align it towards giving. Sandy asks then, does giving to others also transform, move one closer to Hashem? So much so that in Matan Torah, the Baal HaSulam says that we are to prioritize the mitzvot between man and man as opposed to between man and God. Not that between man and God is to be thrown out the window, God forbid. Rather, we get feedback from people. And when I give to a human being, in a way, it's two birds for one stone because I'm giving to the person, but I'm also giving to a soul, really, which is a piece of the Creator. And so it's two. And I can actually ask the person, how was that? Was that good? Do you feel served? Did I hold space for you? God is not calling us at the end of the day saying, you had a great prayer service this afternoon. Doesn't happen. And so, indeed, giving to others, yes, is the preferred way to transform and move closer to Hashem. Not to diminish the direct mitzvahs of Hashem, like Shabbat, keeping kosher, and for men, putting on tefillin and tzitzis and so forth. But yes, we should prioritize giving to others explicitly. Jay says, during a conversation with the sensei, he provided the metaphoric example of armor going through the fire to be formed. I love the description of the tikkun you provided of the gold as I relate this to the quenching and polishing of the armor. Beautiful. Yes, I love that. I resonate with the spiritual warrior archetype, so I appreciate the golden armor that we are revealing. Alfonso says, Shalom Rabbanim, question during this refining the soul, how to know at what point giving is not giving just for searching the pleasure or satisfaction, looking for our Creator's approval, mistakenly instead of the purest alignment with the source. It's a thin line, don't you think? I don't think it's so thin. I think it's really thick, actually, because I can be safe to assume, as crass as it sounds, that anything and everything I do is for some type of personal benefit. Until we pass the quantum leap and become quote unquote righteous individuals, tzaddikim, tzaddikot, when we get to the level of giving to give, then I can be confident that indeed I am giving for the sake of giving. And it really is one of those things. If you know, you know. Now, it could be a fine line where a person is kidding themselves and think that I'm giving and all is well, and they pat themselves in the back and they're getting their, you know, commandment points, mitzvah points. If the experience is one of positivity, this is a general parameter as it pertains to Kabbalistic psychology. If it feels good, it's a sign that it is in a place of alignment, if there's a joy to it. If the action, let's say I gave, but there is some type of expectation or dependency on God's approval, chances are that's not going to feel so great. It's going to be some aspect of misalignment there. So the fine line that you can gauge is your own lived experience and look within and see how you actually feel through the process. If there is a felt sense, pleasantness, enjoy, it's a good sign it's in alignment. Even if it is egoistic, at least there is an intention to give. Now, an intention to give is a very high level. My rabbi has often challenged me through the years and said, you want to give? And I'll say like more realistically, no, of course not. Obviously, I'm an egoist. I want to receive. I want to. I desired the desire to give. That's a bit more realistic. And I'm like, wait, that's even a high level. I desire to give. Is that even true? Like, am I sitting throughout the day and saying, like, I really wish I was giving? No, most of my machinations and thoughts have to do with what I can earn and what I can gain and what I can profit. We generally don't lift a finger unless it serves our desire to receive for itself alone. And so I think it's a thick line because the ego, the desire to receive, is said, it's a bit more technical Kabbalah, but I'll mention it shortly, is said our inner system has a masach, has a screen, a spiritual filter, and it's quite thick and it refines over time. So the desire to receive in of itself is actually humorously a thick line. Uh, but I hear you. You know, it can be nuanced. And the Ashlag Rebbe's do say that it does take divine assistance and providence and help from above to be able to properly discern. So much so that it's safe to say a person in of themselves is unable to. And that is why we need rabbis, we need mentors, we need teachers who have been there, done that. If the individual themselves has been through those rungs on the ladder, then they can efficiently explain and give guidance as to where you're actually at and what your intentions actually are, and be realistic with you as to what you're operating with, whether it's receiving, whether it's giving, or it's a mix. And that is really the Jewish tradition. I mean, it's Sfarim Sofrim. There's this chain of received wisdom and guidance by the sages over 3,300 years, as far as the Torah is concerned. 4,000 if you want to go Abraham, 5,786 if you want to go to Adam. But indeed, it is a chain, as we mentioned earlier. Each sphere has a quality. Does working on that quality help to get us close to God, or is that a non-Kabbalistic thing? The Sfirot themselves are the character traits. When we talk about Tikkun Hamidot, the correction of our character traits, we're referring to the alignment of the Sfirot. So every Sfira is a quality by definition. The word midot, midah, comes from the language of measurement because it's a specific measure of quality. It's a measure of energy. And we want to bring that measurement into the alignment of giving as opposed to receiving for oneself. Thank you, John. All the best. Is Kabbalah all about screen, masach, light, or vessel, as you said, receiving that give the highest order that leads to correction? Wow, that is a technical question. You have been jumping some guns, I see, relative to some other questions you've asked. I'm just saying, like, Partsufi loves the soul. Wow. Is Kabbalah all about those things? I mean, you just mentioned a bunch of fundamental Kabbalistic terms. I would say Kabbalah is all about the transformation from egoism to altruism. That's how I would describe Kabbalah quite simply. And I'm just quoting the Bala Sulam there. Does that equate more technically to the Masach and the Or and the Kli and all these matters? Yeah. Yeah, if you want to get more technical, that's how it ends up happening, is through that inner work. But in short, Kabbalah is all about becoming altruistic, which by definition is a similarity of form, which by definition is a connection to God, because then I am able to receive in order to give, and therefore fulfilling the purpose of creation. Great. Thank you guys so much. Love the questions. Really appreciate the questions. Questions are arguably more important than anything I shared. The question is the vessel. The answer is the light. Sometimes you want to even sit on the question. I'm happy to answer them and provide the perspective. Sometimes when we really sit and let it cook, it's a beautiful thing. Expands us. Thank you so much. Till next week. This will be uploaded into Lion Tree Coaching. Wishing everyone abundant blessing, success, and goodness in all your endeavors. Uh, yeah. Take care.